So, we are observing a general election campaign that's leaving many of us rather cold. But even behind that general election campaign, there's a set of assumptions about what really matters in the world. People on the right say that what really matters is freedom. And people on the left say that what really matters is equality. I don't think that either of those things are what really matters. I think what really matters is that we, all of us, want to live a life which is meaningful to us. A life of which we think we are the author. A life where we can turn our ideas into reality. At the RSA, we call this the power to create. And freedom is part of it, and equality makes a contribution to it. But the thing itself is much richer. It's what the political philosopher Roberto Unger calls the larger life. Now, throughout history, philosophers have talked about this idea of the larger life, the meaningful life, the life that is unique to us, the life that we are the author. And they have thought that this was something available only to the elite in society, the ancient world, just to men. As we've moved forward, just to those who are educated and privileged. But I think now, early in the 21st century, we have, for the first time in human history, the opportunity to imagine that that larger life could be available to all. And for me, that's a much more exciting vision than mere freedom or even equality, however important those things are. The idea that all people could live that life that all of us want to live. Now, why do I think that that's possible? I think it's possible because increasingly this is what people say they aspire to. We have made remarkable progress as a world over the last few years in reducing absolute poverty, and let us hope that we can continue that progress. And as people move out of abject poverty and start to think about other aspirations, increasingly it's that life that is autonomous and meaningful that they aspire to. The World Values Survey, the most comprehensive survey of people's opinions all around the world, finds increasingly that people aspire to what that survey calls self-expression. So that creative, autonomous life is the life that we want. But also something else is changing, and that is what it is that is wanted of us. Increasingly, employers, when they're asked what skills they want from workers, talk about the capacity of young people to take initiative, to work in a team, to have ideas, to be entrepreneurial. Large companies have also realized that often innovation takes place amongst their customers. They need to develop a partnership because their customers are often very creative with the way in which they use products. And also the public sector. For decades after the Second World War, the public sector had a model of delivering services to people as if people themselves were passive, simply the recipients of the beneficence of the state. But now, as a consequence of new ideas and new appetites and austerity, increasingly the public sector knows that the only way that it can help us is actually to provide the circumstances in which we ourselves can find solutions. Local authorities, health authorities, coming to understand that they have got to empower people, empower patients, empower citizens, empower communities to find their own solutions. So the state wants citizens who are autonomous and creative. And then thirdly, the third great force making possible this vision of everybody living the larger life is technology. The internet, the social web, Even though we as yet know only a part of what it will change in our lives, we already know that nothing in human history has torn down the barriers to creativity and self-expression like this technology. All around the world, people generating content, films, music, blogs. The emergence of the sharing economy. Platforms being created for people to design and to create, to collaborate. Of course, not everything on the internet is great, but nothing previously has done this, has opened up the possibility of creativity to us in the way in which the internet is all around the world, and even some of the poorest people in the world, they may not have much, but they have access to that resource to express themselves, to learn from others. So this is an amazing opportunity that we have. It's an incredibly exciting time. But yet, there are barriers too. There are things that stand in the way of this vision of the larger life for all. And the first is this question: do we truly aspire for all our fellow citizens to live that kind of life? When we look in particular at our education system, is this a system oriented to the idea that the aspiration should be that everybody live a creative, meaningful, autonomous life? If that was the case, it wouldn't be true, would it, that we find that schools tend to drive creativity out of people, that young children in primary school have more ideas often than older children in secondary school. We narrow children, we narrow them into subjects, we narrow them into saying that only particular types of attainment are valuable. We get them to think about learning as a means to an end, when the ultimate, surely the ultimate judge of learning is that when you have learnt, you want to learn more. So still we don't aspire to this idea of creativity. If I was to say to you that one class was born to rule over others, you would think it was a terrible reactionary notion. But yet we still believe that only certain people can be creative, only certain roles, certain organizations can be creative. So first of all, we have to aspire, truly aspire to that idea that everybody can live a life that is autonomous and meaningful to them. Secondly, we have to think about the resources that people need to be able to pursue that idea. What is it that people need to be able to turn their ideas into reality? They need confidence. They need intellectual skills. They need social networks. Take one particular thing they need: capital. Lots of research has shown that actually the most important thing to people's sense of possibility in their life is not the money they get every week in benefits or wages, but it's whether they have a small amount of savings that they can use to invest in a business, to retrain, to take a risk with their lives. But yet up to a third of people have no savings at all in a society where the top 1% have enormous amounts of wealth. So if we want this larger life for all, we have to think too about how we expand the resources that people need to be able to turn their ideas into action. And then thirdly, we need to think about something which shapes all our lives. It shapes who you are. Organizations. The whole of our world is shaped by organizations. The changes in the way that organizations work are part of what has created the world, but yet there are still lots of things that organizations do which stand in the way of the vision that I have described to you today. The way in which organizations divide people into those who they think can be creative and practice autonomy and those who can't. Survey after survey finds the single most important determinant of whether people are happy at work, and perhaps more importantly, unhappy at work, is whether or not they have scope for autonomy. And still we deny that to a huge number of people because of the way that organizations work. And think of the way that organizations split our roles. I heard someone the other day talking about the conflict between public service workers and public service users. But public service workers are public service users. Think of people who have been asked to work in whole sectors like financial services, selling products which they knew themselves they wouldn't want to buy. So people work in organizations and are forced to play out roles which divide them and diminish them. And also too often in organizations they lose sight of what their ultimate purpose is. Large companies that started out to make great products and end up just pursuing shareholder value. So people work in organizations disconnected from a sense of purpose in their lives. The future thinker and researcher Charles Leadbeater went round to companies, and charities, and local government all around the world to look at what organizations were the best, which organizations worked, and he came to a very simple conclusion, looking at education charities in India or Pixar or the best state governments, and he said that they were all characterized by one phrase. He said they were creative communities with a cause. Mission-driven organizations, organizations that prized collaboration, and organizations that gave people a space to express themselves, to have autonomy, and to grow. So this idea of the larger life, this idea of a life where we can turn our ideas into reality, it is a prospect for us. And all it is at heart is this, that we should want every other citizen to have that which we prize most in our own lives. That is a possibility today. It is an inspiring possibility. And it's what we at the RSA call the power to create. Thank you.